And we know 8 is 2 times 2 times 2. 2 times 2 is 4. 4 times 2 is 8. So 8 is just 2 to the third. So we know that both are perfect cubes. Okay, so all we have to do is rewrite it. Okay, so x to the third plus 8 can be rewritten as x to the third plus 2 to the third. Okay, so in this case, your a is equal to x, and your b is equal to 2. Okay, so it's a plus sign here, so that means we're going to use the a cubed plus b cubed. Okay, so let me separate that a little bit. So we know a cubed plus b cubed equals a plus b times a squared minus a times b plus b squared. So all we have to do is plug in our a and b. Okay, so in this case, a plus b is x plus 2. A squared is just x squared. Minus a times b is minus x times 2. And you can write it as 2x here, but I'm just kind of keeping it in order for now. Plus b squared becomes 2 squared. Okay, so now you just sort of simplify it from there. So you have x plus 2 times x squared minus, instead of x times 2, you usually put 2 times x, plus 2 squared is just 4. So you just simplify that, and that's your answer. Move that up a little bit. All right. Okay, it's a little longer than the difference of squares, but it's pretty much the same idea, except you're dealing with cubes instead of squares. Okay, any questions on this one? Okay. And be sure to remember these. And I forgot the date. I have to double check the date of the test, but you got a little while to go. It's not coming up like soon. At least for at least another 2 weeks, I think. Something like that. Yes.
So we're gonna have to memorize each formula?
Yes. All right. Any other questions on this one? All right. Okay, so let's say, for example, if we wanted to factor y cubed minus 64. Okay, so the first thing you'd notice, just like all the previous ones, is that y to the third, except if you wanted, you can make that y to the third. You don't have to put the parentheses, but I found that it helps a little bit. And 64 is actually equal to 4 times 4 times 4. Which is 4 to the third. Okay, so we know that both are perfect cubes. Okay, so since you have the minus sign, you're going to use the a cubed minus b cubed. So y cubed minus 64 will just become y to the third minus 4 to the third. Where in this case, your a is equal to y, and your b is equal to 4. Okay, so just separate that a little bit. So if we use the formula, a to the third minus b to the third equals, remember, if it's a minus here, it's going to be a minus b there. A squared plus ab plus b squared. Okay, so now we just plug it into this. So a minus b is just y minus 4. A squared is just y squared. Plus a times b is just y times 4. And you can make it 4y here if you wanted to, but I just kind of keep it in order. Plus b squared is plus 4 squared. Okay, so you just go ahead and simplify it from there. Y minus 4 times y squared plus, instead of y times 4, let me straighten that out a little bit so it doesn't look like 4 times 4. You can make that 4 times y. And instead of 4 squared, you can just make that 16. Oh, yep, I did do that right. Bless you. Okay, and this will be your final answer. Now you could check this, but it takes a little bit longer because you have to distribute the y and distribute the negative 4, combine like terms. Most of them cancel out. Okay, but we can do a check on this one. Okay, so y minus 4 times y squared plus 4y plus 16. If we distribute the y to each one of those terms, we end up with y times y squared is y to the third. Y times 4y is 4y squared. Y times 16 is 16y. Now we distribute the negative 4 to all of those terms. Negative 4 times y squared is minus 4y squared. Negative 4 times 4y is negative 16y. Negative 4 times 16 is 64. Negative 64. So you have positive 16y, negative 16 cancels out. Negative 4y, positive 4y squared cancels out. So you're left with y to the third minus 64. Okay. So you can check it, but a lot of times it's a little longer to check than the square. So, all right. Any questions on that one? Okay. Oh, where is that one I just had? Ah. Okay, so factoring using both difference of squares and sum or difference of cubed. Okay, so this is when you can you have to factor using both of them in the exact same problem. Okay, so let's say, for example, if we have to factor x squared, uh-oh, that should be a minus. Minus 16x plus 64 minus y squared. Okay. And up till now, when you saw 4 terms, first thing you think is, okay, I can use factor by grouping. The only thing that throws this one off is the fact that that's a y. So now if you try factoring by grouping, that binomial wouldn't match up, so you wouldn't be able to factor it out. Okay. So now, this is where you have to factor using your sum, difference of cubes, in some cases. Okay. Actually, this probably should have been used multiple, because this example didn't use the sum and difference of cubes, but we can still work with it. Okay, so now if you have x squared minus 16x plus 64 minus y squared, with this one, the first thing you're going to notice is if the first 3 terms make up a perfect square. And notice if the first 3 terms can make up a perfect square. Okay. Now with this one, you can use the perfect square formula if you want to, or you can notice there's nothing in front of the x squared, and you can use the 2 numbers that multiply to equal c, and the same 2 numbers add to equal b. Okay. So here, you notice 2 numbers that multiply to equal 64, and those same 2 numbers add to equal negative 16. Okay. So in this case, negative 8 and negative 8 would work. Because negative 8 times negative 8 is positive 64, and negative 8 plus negative 8 is negative 16. So this will actually just become, so instead of x squared minus 16x plus 64 minus y squared, this will now become x minus 8 times x minus 8. Minus y squared. And that can be rewritten as x minus 8 squared minus y squared. So you just turn this into a difference of squares. Okay. But in this case, remember that's your A. I'll move that up top so everything's not kind of jumbled on the bottom. Oops, there we go. Okay, now move that down here. So x minus 8 squared minus y squared, your A is equal to x minus 8, and your B is equal to y. Okay, and remember, your difference of squares is a squared minus b squared equals a plus b times a minus b. So that means for this one, it will equal x minus 8 plus y times x minus 8 minus y. Okay, and that will be your answer. Okay, so your goal is really to turn the first 3 terms into a perfect square using any of the methods we just learned. And then once you have it as a perfect square, you'll have a difference of squares. Okay, so I'll write that goal. Turn the first 3 terms into a perfect square. Okay, using any method. Uh-oh. To create, move that up some, a difference of squares. Okay, so really you're going to create a perfect square trinomial, use that to solve a difference of squares. All right. Okay, so let's go to another example. Okay, so let's say, for example, we wanted to factor x squared minus 18x plus 81 minus y squared. Okay, and I'll let you start on that. Just use the same steps as the previous example. Alright, let's start on this one. You have x squared minus 18x plus 81 minus y squared. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is check to see if the first three terms are perfect square, which they will be. Okay, so we know there's nothing in front of the x squared. So since there's nothing in front of the x squared, we can just do the same two numbers multiplied equals c and add together to equal b. That's the fastest method. So two numbers multiply to equal your c, which is 81. And those same two numbers have to add to equal your b, which is negative 18. Okay, so which two numbers did you pick? Yep, negative 9 and negative 9. Okay, so negative 9 times negative 9 is positive 18. Negative 9 plus negative 9 is negative 18. Positive 81, negative 18. Sorry about that. So that means this just becomes x minus 9. X minus 9 and x minus 9. Okay, so we can rewrite this x squared minus 18x plus 81 minus y squared into x minus 9 squared minus y squared. So all we did was get those three and turn them into that. Okay, so once we did that, we just created a difference of squares. So now it is a difference of squares. Okay, so that means we can get our, I'll just rewrite it instead of trying to squeeze everything there. Using the formula, a squared minus b squared equals a plus b times a minus b. Our a is going to equal x minus 9, and our b is going to equal y. So you can make it y squared if you want to. Okay, so all you have to do is plug this into that formula. So a plus b is x minus 9 plus y, and a minus b is x minus 9 minus y. And that's your answer. All right, so any questions on that one? Okay. Okay, so let's do one more example. Oops, wrong one. Make sure I got the right one. Yep. Okay, so let's say, for example, we wanted to factor 25x squared minus 60x plus 36 minus y squared. Okay, so just like before, 25x squared minus 60x plus 36 minus y squared. I want to check to see if the first three terms can become a perfect square. Okay. So we know here, since you have something in front of the x squared, you can't use the two numbers and multiply to equal c and add to equal b method. And I'm pretty sure you don't want to use the a times c method. You'll be dealing with really big numbers. Okay. So we know here, I'll just kind of do that 25x squared minus 60x plus 36, you know these two are perfect squares. Okay, so we know 25 is 5 times 5. So we have 5x squared minus, remember you're going to leave that middle term blank for a few minutes. And 36 is just 6 times 6. Okay, so that means this middle term, if we go back to our formula, a squared minus 2ab plus b squared equals a minus b squared. So that means this middle term has to be 2 times a times b. So 2 times a times b, and that's if your a is equal to 5x and your b is equal to 6. Okay, so we just plug all those in and we see where we are. So you have 2 times a, which is 5x, times b, which is 6. Okay, 6 times 5 is 30, so you have 30x. 30 times 2 is 60. So we have our 2ab. Okay, so this is a perfect square. Perfect square trinomial. Okay, so because it's a perfect square trinomial, it's going to equal a minus b squared, which is just going to be 5x minus 6 squared. Okay, so that's just for those three terms. So all we had to do was create a perfect square from those first three. Okay, so now that we have those first three in a perfect square, now we have 25x squared minus 60x plus 36 minus y squared. Remember, we kind of mess with those.